My partner thought they could cheat on me with a coworker, laugh behind my back, and still climb the corporate ladder at my side. What they didn't know, I don't just get mad, I get even. And I had the perfect stage, the very company where we both worked. If you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who betrayed you, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this is the story of how I turned heartbreak into the most satisfying revenge of my life. I wasn't supposed to find out that way. You know how they say betrayal doesn't come with fireworks, that sometimes it's just silence. For me, it came in the form of a half open door and muffled laughter that wasn't meant for my ears. It was a Wednesday evening, one of those late nights where the office hummed with fluorescent light and the faint rattle of the cleaning crew's carts. I was dragging my feet back from a client call room when I passed the break lounge. The door was cracked just enough for voices to spill out. Her voice. His voice. I froze, not because I thought anything was wrong, at least not at first. She was my girlfriend, Melissa, someone I had trusted with 3 years of my life. He was Brandon, a slick account manager, all tailored suits and fake smiles. The two of them laughing together wasn't unusual, but the tone, that hushed intimacy, that was new. I stood there longer than I should have. Stop. Someone could walk in, she whispered. Relax, he murmured back, followed by the sound of lips brushing skin. My stomach dropped. My throat tightened as though someone had slipped a fist inside and squeezed. The air grew heavy, sticky, impossible to swallow. I couldn't move, only listen, only hear the scraping of a chair, the soft shuffle of clothes, a muffled moan. I stumbled backward, heartbeat hammering so loud I thought it might give me away. My palms were slick, my face hot, and I couldn't think past the raw knife edge of realization she was cheating. In our office, with a coworker I had shared beers with after work. The universe has a sick sense of humor. When I finally made it back to my desk, my hands were trembling. I stared at my computer screen, numbers and emails blurring together. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. Don't cry here, I told myself, not in this place, not where they can see you. But the tears came anyway, hot, furious, silent. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Because suddenly, every inside joke between them, every casual touch I had brushed off as coworker banter, every late night excuse about working late, all of it played back in my head like a cruel montage. And I had been the idiot smiling through it. When I finally left the office, the city lights blurred against my windshield. I drove home on autopilot, numb. Our shared apartment felt colder than the January air outside. Her coat hung on the rack, her perfume clung to the hallway, and all I could think about was how those same lips that kissed me goodnight were just pressed against another man minutes earlier. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over like some masochist addicted to pain. My body felt restless, twitchy, like I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I wanted answers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But most of all, I wanted justice. The next day, I didn't plan on confronting her. I had told myself I'd gather evidence, be calm, be rational. But grief doesn't care about plans. She came home from work, tossing her bag on the couch like nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek, the same lips, and chirped about her day. I watched her, every word scraping my nerves raw. Finally, I snapped. How long? Her smile faltered. What? I swallowed, my voice low and sharp. How long have you been sleeping with Brandon? Her face drained of color. For a second, she was a deer in headlights. Then she laughed, like I had just said the dumbest thing in the world. You're paranoid, she said, rolling her eyes, but her hands shook as she pulled off her earrings. I heard you, I hissed. Last night. In the office lounge, silence. Then the mask cracked, her shoulders slumped, her voice turned cold. Fine, she snapped. You want the truth? Yes, it happened. More than once? Are you happy now? Happy. The word sliced deeper than the confession. She said it like I was the problem, like my discovery was the real crime. I felt my fists ball up, nails digging into my palms so hard they left crescents. My whole body trembled, not with sadness this time, but with rage. Why? I choked out. Her answer was the kind of cruelty you never forget, because he makes me feel alive. You're boring, predictable. You'll never be anything more than middle management. That was the death blow. Not just that she betrayed me, but that she looked down on me, on the very stability I had built, the life I had offered. She walked away that night, slamming the door behind her. And with that, my heart wasn't just broken. It was scorched into ash. The days after blurred together. At work, I kept my head down, forcing fake smiles while whispers echoed behind my back. because of course she had told people. Of course, Brandon strutted around like he'd won some prize. Every time I passed him in the hallway, he smirked. That smug, oily grin made my blood boil. Melissa avoided me, but not enough. I'd see her slip into conference rooms with him. I'd catch the flicker of her laugh at his jokes. Once I even walked into the kitchen and found them pressed close together, her hand grazing his tie. She didn't even flinch when I entered, just looked at me with this cold detachment, as if I was a stranger. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was humiliation. I thought about quitting, starting over somewhere else. But then something in me shifted. Why should I leave? Why should I be the one to throw away years of work, friendships, reputation? They had taken enough from me already. No. If they wanted war, I would give them war, and not the kind where you shout and scream and lose everything. No, I would play this smart. I would play this slow. If Melissa and Brandon wanted to treat me like I was boring, predictable, forgettable, then I would prove them wrong in the most unforgettable way possible. That was the night I stopped being a victim. That was the night the planning began. The morning after my decision, I woke with something I hadn't felt in weeks: clarity. The grief was still there, a bitter undercurrent, but above it floated something sharper: purpose. If Melissa thought she could break me and walk away unscathed, she was mistaken. And if Brandon thought he could parade around the office like the king of the world, he had another thing coming. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to let either of them see me falter. No, I was going to dismantle them piece by piece. But in order to win, I needed leverage. And leverage meant information. For weeks, I became a ghost in my own workplace. Not absent. No, I couldn't afford that, but unnoticed. I smiled politely, kept my head down, and played the role of the heartbroken ex-boyfriend who was trying to move on. People underestimated you when they thought you were broken. They spoke freely. They whispered near you. They forgot you were listening, and I listened. I learned that Melissa and Brandon weren't exactly discreet. The office rumor mill was alive with stories: how they slipped out together for client meetings, how their hands brushed in the break room, how Brandon boasted about his conquests. After a few too many drinks at happy hour, the more I listened, the more disgust turned into determination. If I was going to do this right, I needed proof. Our company used Slack for internal messaging. Most people assumed private channels and DMs were safe. They weren't. Brandon, being careless, often left his laptop unlocked during bathroom breaks. I noticed this once during a meeting. His desk was across from mine, and when he got up, his screen glowed with an open Slack window. Curiosity surged like an electric jolt. I didn't act then, but I made note of it. A week later, opportunity struck again. He left in a hurry, muttering about a call, leaving his laptop open. My heart pounded as I slid casually into his chair, fingers flying over the keyboard. Search Melissa. The results lit up like fireworks: flirty messages, meeting times, inside jokes dripping with innuendo, and then pictures. Nothing explicit, but suggestive enough to ruin reputations. I screenshotted everything, emailed it to a private, encrypted account, and deleted traces from his machine. My hands shook the entire time, but when I walked back to my desk, a cold smile tugged at my lips. That was the first real piece of ammo. Revenge wasn't a solo game. I needed allies, people who disliked them, or at least had no loyalty to protect them. The first was Jenna, a senior analyst. She had once been close friends with Melissa but drifted apart after too many lies. One day at lunch, I sat with her. We talked about projects, deadlines, the usual small talk. Then carefully I shifted gears. Hey, can I ask you something? Between us, she raised an eyebrow. Depends. It's about Melissa and Brandon. I don't know if I'm crazy, but Jenna smirked. You're not crazy. Half the office knows. They're not exactly subtle. Her bitterness was clear. I didn't push, but I left that conversation with an unspoken pact. She wasn't on their side. Then there was Sam from IT, a quiet guy, glasses always slipping down his nose. People ignored him, but I had once helped him with a presentation when his slides glitched. Small acts build trust. Over coffee one morning, I asked, hey, random question. Hypothetically, if someone was dumb enough to mix personal stuff with company accounts like Slack or email, would that be traceable? Sam chuckled. Oh, absolutely. Company owns all of it. You'd be shocked at what people send thinking it's private. I smiled. Good to know. Sam didn't ask why. Two allies, enough to make me feel less alone, but not enough to tip my hand. Direct revenge would be too obvious. If I exposed the affair outright, sure, it would cause a stir, but it wouldn't destroy them. They'd spin it as two people who fell in love. they'd survive. No, I needed to erode their foundation slowly. First, target Brandon's reputation at work. He prided himself on charm, but his work ethic, spotty at best. He pawned tasks off on others, took credit for ideas, and schmoozed his way into promotions. I started documenting everything. Every time he missed a deadline, every time he forgot to CC a manager, every time he vanished during crunch hours. Quietly, I compiled a dossier of incompetence. Meanwhile, I subtly sowed doubt. In meetings, when Brandon claimed credit for something, I'd casually add, right, the idea Jenna pitched last week. You really polished it up, Brandon. A small seed, but one that made eyes flick toward Jenna with curiosity. In the break room, I'd drop harmless comments like, man, Brandon's lucky he has Melissa to keep him focused. Otherwise, he'd never hit those numbers. Harmless, but repeated often enough, people started wondering if his success was truly his own. Revenge required patience. But I needed to test just how fragile their little empire was. One Friday evening, during happy hour, I sat at the far end of the bar where several coworkers gathered. Brandon, predictably drunk, laughed too loudly. Melissa clung to his arm like a prize. I leaned toward Jenna and whispered, just loud enough? I give it 3 months before management notices. Notices what? She asked. I gave a sly smile. That Brandon's only good at one thing, and it's not sales reports. Jenna laughed, loud enough for others to hear. The words rippled outward, people chuckling, whispering. Brandon glanced over, confused. Melissa's face tightened. A test, and it worked. The Slack messages were gold, but I wanted more. Proof that would tie them together in ways they couldn't deny. Melissa was more careful than Brandon, but not by much. She often left her phone on the counter during coffee breaks. A quick glance showed a string of late night texts from B. I didn't need to read them to know. But then one day, fate handed me a gift. She had synced her work email to her phone and forgot to disable notifications. A preview popped up while we were in a meeting from Brandon's subject. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for round two. I nearly laughed out loud. That evening, I asked Sam a hypothetical. Again, if someone forwarded personal emails from their work account, would IT be able to recover them later? He pushed his glasses up, smirking. Let's just say nothing ever really disappears. Perfect. Now I had Slack screenshots, rumors already bubbling, allies who weren't on their side, a dossier of Brandon's failures, hints of Melissa's recklessness. But I didn't want to just expose them. I wanted to ruin them in the same arena they had humiliated me, the workplace. So I devised a plan. Step 1, let their arrogance grow. The more comfortable they got, the harder they'd fall. Step 2, leak small bits of information anonymously. A Slack screenshot here, an overheard quote there, just enough to make management raise an eyebrow. Step 3, wait for the perfect opportunity, something public, undeniable, and catastrophic. For months, I watched and waited. It was excruciating at times, sitting across from them in meetings, watching their little flirtations. But patience was power. Slowly, the office dynamic shifted. People stopped laughing at Brandon's jokes. Melissa's charm started wearing thin. Whispers grew louder. And then the golden opportunity landed in my lap. A major client presentation was coming up. Brandon had volunteered to lead it, bragging that he could seal the deal with his charisma. Melissa, naturally, was his support. If they nailed it, their careers would skyrocket. If they failed, I didn't just want failure. I wanted collapse. The night before the presentation, I struck. Using the encrypted account, I sent an anonymous package to HR and upper management, screenshots of their Slack messages, forwarded emails, notes on Brandon's missed deadlines and questionable behavior, and the PI's DRA assistants, a recording. Remember that break room incident, the first time I caught them? I had started carrying a small voice recorder after that night. Paranoia turned into foresight. And one afternoon, while they whispered about sneaking away together, I caught every word. It wasn't just incriminating, it was damning. I sent it all with a simple note. If you want to know why performance is slipping and clients are at risk, start here. That night, I barely slept. My mind buzzed with anticipation, fear, and exhilaration. Would it work? Would management actually act? I pictured Brandon swaggering into that meeting, Melissa smiling beside him, both of them clueless that the ground was already cracking beneath their feet. And me, I'd be sitting there too, mask firmly in place, waiting for the show to begin. Because tomorrow wasn't just a client presentation. Tomorrow was the beginning of their end. I woke before my alarm. For once, it wasn't because of dread, it was anticipation, the kind that prickled under my skin and made every nerve hum with energy. I dressed carefully, a crisp shirt, Tailored blazer, polished shoes, power armor. Today wasn't just another day at work. Today was performance art, and I was both director and silent spectator. As I entered the office, the atmosphere was already buzzing. Brandon strutted through the halls, chest puffed, his suit sharper than usual. Melissa clung to his side like an accessory. They looked invincible. I smiled to myself. The higher they fly, the harder they fall. The conference room was massive, walls lined with glass, city skyline gleaming in the distance. A long polished table dominated the space, surrounded by executives, analysts, and managers. The client's representatives had flown in, serious, sharp eyed people in sleek suits. This was the kind of meeting that could make or break careers. Brandon thrived on this pressure, convinced he was the star. As people settled in, he leaned back in his chair, cracking a joke that drew polite chuckles. Melissa organized slides on the projector, her smile calm, collected. No one suspected what was coming. Brandon launched into the presentation, his voice smooth, practiced. For the first 10 minutes, he held the room. Charts glowed on the screen, buzzwords filled the air. Melissa chimed in, occasionally reinforcing his points. But then, exactly as planned, the cracks appeared. One of the executives frowned, flipping through the printed handouts. Wet, she interrupted. This data doesn't match the numbers we received last week. Can you explain the discrepancy? Brandon blinked, thrown off. His eyes darted to Melissa. She hesitated, then stammered something about updates and different data pulls. The executive wasn't convinced. Neither were the clients. Murmurs rippled through the room. What they didn't know was that I had subtly altered the data set Brandon was relying on. A few small tweaks in the shared drive, nothing obvious, just enough to create confusion. Watching Brandon flail was delicious. Things spiraled quickly. Another client rep asked a technical question Brandon should have known cold. He froze, stammered, then tried to bullshit his way through. His confidence cracked, arrogance evaporating under the fluorescent lights. Melissa jumped in, trying to salvage things. But she only drew attention to herself, and her numbers didn't add up either. And then, like a perfectly timed cue, the HR director slipped into the room. At first, no one noticed her presence, but she stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes locked on Brandon and Melissa. My chest tightened with anticipation. Here we go. The presentation limped to an end, scattered applause barely disguising the awkwardness. Brandon wiped sweat from his forehead, forcing a grin. Thank you all, he said, voice a pitch too high. We're confident this strategy will, Brandon, Melissa. The HR director's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone turned. I need both of you to step outside. Now, the silence that followed was deafening. Brandon's face drained of color. Melissa glanced at him, panic flashing in her eyes. We're in the middle of. Brandon began. Now, the director repeated sharper. Chairs squeaked as they stood, whispers igniting like sparks. They followed her out, stiff, backed, pretending nothing was wrong. But we all knew. Everyone knew. The meeting continued without them, but no one was focused. Phones buzzed under the table as words spread like wildfire. I sat there, expression neutral, heart thundering in satisfaction, because I knew exactly what was happening down that hallway. HR was confronting them with the evidence, the Slack messages, the emails, the recording. Their private little affair wasn't private anymore. And in a company like ours, with strict codes of conduct and zero tolerance for conflicts of interest, they weren't just guilty of bad judgment. They were guilty of compromising the company itself. It was nuclear. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Brandon and Melissa walked back in, flanked by HR. But they weren't the same. Gone were the smug grins, the cocky confidence. Their faces were pale, eyes downcast, shoulders slumped. Brandon looked like he'd aged 10 years in 20 minutes. Melissa's mascara was smudged, her composure shattered. The HR director spoke to the room. We'll need to reschedule this presentation. Certain issues have come to light. We appreciate everyone's understanding. And just like that, the meeting was adjourned. Executives whispered. Clients exchanged sharp glances. The damage was done. By the afternoon, the entire office knew. Screenshots circulated in hushed Slack channels. Whispers filled the halls. People stared openly as Brandon and Melissa were escorted to HR. I accidentally overheard one manager mutter, "Unbelievable," right under our noses. Another sighed. I trusted him with that account. What a joke. Melissa avoided everyone's eyes, but Brandon tried to save face, snapping at coworkers, insisting it was all blown out of proportion. His desperation only fueled the fire. By the end of the day, both their access cards were deactivated. They were done. The fallout was glorious. Brandon's projects were reassigned. Clients demanded new representatives. His name, once said with respect, became a punchline. Melissa tried to spin it as harassment, but the evidence was too damning. HR wasn't just investigating the affair, they were looking into misused company funds, suspicious expense reports, and more. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, the picture of professionalism. I consoled coworkers, shook my head in disappointment, and pretended to be shocked. Inside, though, I was reveling. The sweetest moment came a week later when I ran into Melissa outside the office. She looked hollow, like a ghost of the woman I once knew. Her voice cracked when she spoke. Did you do this? I met her eyes, calm, steady. Do what? She searched my face, desperation flickering. Then, with a bitter laugh, she whispered, "You'll never change. Always so damn calculated." I smiled faintly, maybe. But at least I'm predictable. Her expression crumpled. She turned and walked away. And for the first time since that night I heard her with Brandon, I felt free. Revenge isn't supposed to fix everything. It doesn't erase the betrayal or undo the pain. But in that moment, watching their empire crumble, I realized something important. I hadn't just gotten even. I had taken back control. They had underestimated me, called me boring, predictable, forgettable. And yet, in the end, I was the one they'd never forget. The morning after the gala felt like waking up in a different universe. For the first time in months, I didn't have that nauseating cocktail of dread and suspicion rolling in my stomach. No gnawing paranoia about what Jacob was doing behind my back. No tightness in my chest when I imagined Lisa and him whispering in some dimly lit hotel bar. Instead, I woke up with sunlight streaming through the blinds of my apartment where he no longer had a key, and the quiet hum of my coffee machine in the background. I stretched, yawned, and then picked up my phone. The notifications had exploded overnight. Apparently, the video of Jacob's meltdown had gone viral. Someone at the gala had captured it. Jacob, red-faced, screaming at Lisa as she stormed out, her makeup smudged, her reputation in shreds. Someone else had gotten the shot of me walking out the front entrance, shoulders back, chin high, while the two of them crumbled behind me. By sunrise, TikTok, Instagram, and even LinkedIn had snippets of it with captions like, "Cheater loses everything in front of the whole company. Queen energy. The way she walks out like she owns the place, iconic." This is better than HBO drama. It was surreal. Overnight, I had gone from humiliated girlfriend to folk hero. People love justice, especially when it's messy, public, and undeniable. But that was only the beginning. By Monday, the office was buzzing with whispers. Nobody dared talk to me directly, at least not yet, but I could feel their eyes follow me as I walked past cubicles, as if I carried radioactive proof of everything they had suspected about Jacob. By 10 a.m., the CEO called Jacob into a closed-door meeting. He emerged 45 minutes later, pale, sweating, his tie loosened. He didn't look at anyone as he stormed past, but I caught the words, "Indefinite leave," when one of the partners whispered to another, "Indefinite leave. That's corporate speak for, we don't want to fire you outright, but you're done here." As for Lisa, she didn't even make it to Tuesday. The contractor scandal emails had surfaced on the internal compliance team's desk, and with the gala footage circulating, the board wanted blood. By Wednesday morning, Lisa's desk was cleared out. She left without saying goodbye, her heels clacking like gunshots across the marble lobby floor. When she passed me in the elevator bank, I could feel the tension radiating off her. She looked me dead in the eyes, her jaw trembling with rage, and spat, "You think you've won, don't you?" I didn't flinch. I didn't even speak. I just tilted my head slightly, gave her the faintest smile, and let the elevator doors close between us. Jacob tried to salvage what was left of his social circle. He threw a dinner party the following weekend, but hardly anyone showed up. Word had spread through colleagues, through friends of friends, through the invisible rumor mill that devours corporate scandals like candy. The people who did show up, they left early. Because here's the thing about narcissists like Jacob, they think their charm is indestructible. They don't realize it's only ever been a mask. And once people see the cracks, the illusion shatters. One by one, his poker buddies stopped answering his texts. His gym friends unfollowed him on Instagram. Even his own brother posted something cryptic online about snakes who get what they deserve. Meanwhile, I was invited out for drinks by colleagues who had barely spoken to me before. People stopped me in the break room just to say, "You handled that with so much grace." Grace, that was the word that kept coming up. It was intoxicating. Of course, Jacob wasn't the type to go quietly. 3 weeks later, he called me. His number popped up on my phone late at night, long after I'd settled into bed with a glass of wine and a book. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but then I wanted to hear what he had to say. I picked up. Hello, there was a pause on the other end. Then his voice cracked and shaky. You destroyed me. I let the silence hang for a moment before replying. No, Jacob, you destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. You think you're some kind of hero, he spat. You think this is justice. You're pathetic. I laughed softly. Maybe. But I'm not the one sleeping alone in an empty apartment, wondering who still answers my calls. The line went dead. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. Lisa, however, wasn't done. 2 months later, I got an email from her. Long, rambling, venomous. She accused me of ruining her career, of being jealous, of stealing the narrative. She claimed she was moving to another city, that she'd rebuild, that I hadn't seen the last of her. I didn't reply, but I did forward the email to HR just to keep a paper trail. Because if she ever tried to spin some sob story about being pushed out unfairly, I wanted the record to show who had crossed the line first. The thing about people like Lisa is they thrive on reaction. Denny them that and they wither. Life after revenge is strange. At first, it felt like I was walking around in a dream. I half expected Jacob to reappear, smirking with some new manipulation up his sleeve. I half expected Lisa to show up at the office, laughing at how she'd tricked us all again. But weeks turned into months, and they stayed gone. I got promoted, not because of the scandal, but because, freed from the constant weight of Jacob's chaos, I had room to shine. My projects thrived. Clients trusted me, colleagues wanted me on their teams. And in my personal life, I started traveling again: Italy, Japan, Costa Rica. Every time I boarded a plane, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of the life I'd almost lost to their deceit. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how close I came to letting Jacob convince me I was the problem. How many times I replayed his gaslighting in my head, wondering if maybe I was too needy, too suspicious, too dramatic. But then I remember the look on his face at the gala, the exact moment the mask slipped, the exact moment everyone saw who he really was. And I remember the wave of vindication that crashed over me. Revenge isn't always loud. It doesn't always involve screaming or smashing things or burning bridges. Sometimes it's as simple as pulling away the curtain and letting people see the truth for themselves. And once they see it, there's no unseeing. It's been a year now. I'm sitting at a rooftop bar in Lisbon, the sun setting in pink and gold over the tiled rooftops, a glass of sangria in hand. My phone buzzes with a LinkedIn notification. Jacob is looking for work. I laugh out loud. The irony is almost too perfect. He once told me I was nothing without him, that I was lucky he chose me. And now he's a footnote, a cautionary tale whispered about in offices and dinner parties. Meanwhile, I've never felt more alive. I raise my glass to the horizon and murmur, to sweet, sweet payback. And I let the moment linger, knowing that justice, when served cold and clever, tastes better than anything else in the world.